Alright, we are back with the final two lands of the Lantern Core theme park. If you haven't seen the other two videos, they're going to be linked in the description below, so be sure to check those out before watching this one to see what the other lands consisted of. That being said, let's hop right into it. The next land next to the Indigo Tribe's planet of Nock is going to be the Sinestro Core's planet of Cord. Cord is a mostly barren planet with an industrial society and a rocky terrain. Although, unlike other planets other land cores have colonized, Cord had intelligent life already living on it before the Sinestro cores arrived. In fact, when Sinestro was exiled from the Green Lantern Corps and arrived at Cord, he enslaved all the Cordians and forced their most elite blacksmiths and weaponeers to forge him a power ring of his own. He would eventually go on to force the Cordians to build more power rings so that Sinestro could have a Lantern Core of his own, and a central power battery to help power those rings. Now, all Cordians sport slave collars put on them by Sinestro himself to assure their loyalty. This will be made evident to the guests as the first thing they encounter on Cord is a marketplace run by the people of Cord. At many of these kiosks, the enslaved Cordians will sell Sinestro Core and Cord merchandise, Cordian knickknacks, and Cordian cuisine. All cast members working at these kiosks would have to always act miserable as to make it believable that they are indeed slaves of Sinestro. Of course, this wouldn't be too difficult for most minimum wage workers to do, so that should be easy. The first actual ride of the land would be a topspin ride that would basically look like it was a metal bucket that's pouring out liquid metal. While on this ride, guests get splashed with a bit of water as if they were getting splashed by the molten metal. And guests would also experience close encounters with the molten metal below them. The next ride in land would be a teacups ride that would have guests creating Sinestro Core power rings. How this would work is that in the center of each teacup would be the handle that is used to spin the teacups, but within that would be casting slots where Sinestro Core power rings would be forged. The center of the ride would be a cauldron holding a lot of molten metal, and at the beginning of the ride, the molten metal would flow to your teacup and would flow to the inside of the handle where the cast lies. You would then be told by a cast member that you would need to spin your teacup and spin the handle in order to cool the molten metal within the cast in order to create the power ring. And of course, by the end of the ride, after you've spun around a whole bunch, the metal will have cooled and you would see the power ring forged within your handle. The last ride in the land would be the Cord Factory Tour, where you would hop into a roller coaster type vehicle, similar to the one that they have for Harry Potter and the Escape from Gringotts, that would take you on a tour of the factory. Of course, since we're using the same ride vehicle as Harry Potter and the Escape from Gringotts, this would be a roller coaster mixed with a simulator / dark ride. Guests would enter this ride through one of the many factories on Cord, where they would see many slaves working away while traveling through the queue. While in the factory warehouse, a giant projection of Sinestro's face would appear on the wall in front of guests. He would inform the guests that he is looking forward to meeting them and welcoming the humans to Cord, and giving them a proper Sinestro Core's welcome. He then hatches a plan to give guests a tour of the factories on Cord, so the guests would continue moving through the queue and eventually board the alien touring vehicle. The ride would start off as advertised, with Sinestro giving you a personal tour of the Cordian factories. The ride remains on this course till a Cordian worker messes up and drops a power ring before it has been finished being made. Sinestro turns to the slave with immense anger. Sinestro grabs the slave by the throat and throws him at the touring vehicle, hitting us and ultimately killing the slave. Sinestro then says, "Well, it looks like we're gonna need more workers around here. You will all do just fine." He then makes a light construct of a hammer and hits our cart up in the air and outside the factory. Before we can hit the ground, our Kilo, Sinestro's second in command, catches our cart and roars in our face before carrying us down onto a new track. Our Kilo then walks in front of our cart and pulls a lever to send us flying down the track. After traveling down the track for a while, we find ourselves back in a factory, except now we are on a conveyor belt leading straight to an incinerator. Sinestro appears again and gives us the ultimatum of becoming his slaves or burning to death in the flames. Of course, because we are so heroic, we deny his offer and accept our fate. That is until the conveyor belt comes to a stop right in front of the incinerator. The heat of the flames is extreme, and the temperature of the guests raises immensely. Sinestro, confused, says, "Well, that wasn't supposed to happen. I guess I'll just have to handle it myself." He lifts our cart up using his power ring, stares us in the face, and gives us one more chance to change our minds, as fate has given us another chance. After not getting a response, Sinestro says, "Fine, have it your way. There are plenty more to enslave on this pathetic planet anyways." But before Sinestro can throw us into the fire, he is hit with a beam of green light, injuring him and forcing him to drop us back onto the conveyor belt. Hal Jordan, along with other Green Lanterns, have arrived to save the day. The Green Lanterns and Sinestro, alongside Arkilo, battle each other in an intense fight. However, somehow during the fight, the conveyor belt gets turned back on. We once again start to move towards the incinerator to the point where our peripheral vision is completely blocked and we can only see the flames. Just as we think we're about to be burned to death, we are surrounded by a green light freezing us. We are then pulled off the track to come face to face with Hal Jordan and the other Green Lanterns, whom defeated and apprehended Sinestro and Arkilo. Hal thanks us for distracting Sinestro long enough for them to arrive and capture him. Hal places us back down and we exit the ride in a cavern at the base of the Cordian's central power battery. Here would be meet and greets with the now apprehended and cuffed Sinestro and Arkilo. They would be mostly quiet after the embarrassing defeat, but would have the occasional snap where they would lash out at a guest, resulting in them being shocked by their restraints. Next accord would be the final planet and land of the park. The last crashed planet would be Okara, the headquarters of the sole Orange Lantern, Larfleeze. The planet of Okara is split into two sections: the dense jungle filled with malicious plants known as the Forbidden Forest of Weeds, and the underground caverns where Larfleeze and the Orange Lantern's central power battery reside. Guests would first enter the land through the jungle, encountering several carnivorous alien plants. There would be some Okaran merchants selling food that would be mostly plant-based, as we are meant to believe that all the food they have comes from the plants we see in the jungle. Eventually, guests would make their way to the underground caverns of the planet, which would start off as ominous and creepy hollows with bones littering the walls and ground. It would stay this way until the light of the Orange Lantern's central power battery fills the caves. Surrounding the central power battery would be a giant pile of treasures, as well as signs with a crude drawing of Larfleeze on them and the word "mine." Just in case you didn't know, the Orange Lantern is the embodiment of greed, so Larfleeze isn't one for sharing, which also happens to explain why he's the only Orange Lantern. Knowing this, of course, guests are going to be a little skeptical as to why Larfleeze would allow them to enter his cavern. While in this part of the cave, Larfleeze's voice would come out from the top of the cave. He would greet guests and welcome them to his humble abode. He wouldn't show himself, but would instead put on a puppet show with puppets of the leaders of all the Lantern Corps, including himself, and some of the Guardians of the Universe. This show would essentially have Larfleeze telling many different stories from the Lanternverse. However, he would tell them by framing himself as the hero in every tale, and would constantly make digs at the other Lantern Corps and the Guardians of the Universe. When the puppet show isn't occurring, Larfleeze would come out as a walk-around character and would meet guests in front of the Orange Lantern's central power battery while also protecting his loot. After watching that interesting show and meeting Larfleeze, guests would travel deeper into the cave to the main attraction of the land. Guests would enter a pre-show area where they would encounter two Orange Lantern avatars. Orange Lantern avatars are reanimated constructs of people Larfleeze has killed, and they are forced to obey his every command. These two Orange Lantern avatars identify themselves as Bluch and Turpa. They inform guests that they found the Orange Lantern power battery alongside Larfleeze, but the greed from the battery consumed the three of them, leading to them fighting over its power. Obviously, Larfleeze won the fight, killing Bluch and Turpa, turning them into Orange Lantern avatars. However, they explain to the guests that seeing as this was many years ago, they now forgive Larfleeze and have come to see that Larfleeze has learned to control his greed over the years. They also explain that because of this, Larfleeze has decided to welcome new living members into his corps, as living Lantern Corps members would be immensely more powerful than any Orange Lantern avatar Larfleeze could create. They then would instruct guests to move on to the next room where Larfleeze would vet them to see who is worthy of the Orange Lantern power ring. The next room would look very similar to the theater in the round experience that is evident in Stitch's Great Escape and extraterrestrial alien encounter before it at the Magic Kingdom. Here, an animatronic of Larfleeze would stand in the middle of the room, asking guests vague and rhetorical questions that he clearly is not expecting answers to. Eventually, the lights would go out, and Larfleeze would begin to move around the room and touch, quote-unquote, guests, and steal, quote-unquote, several things from the guests while voicing a lot of his actions out loud. Also, while the lights are out, the orange light from Larfleeze's power ring would occasionally be visible to further enhance the illusion of Larfleeze actually moving around the room. When these shenanigans end and the lights come back on, Larfleeze would be sitting on top of a pile of items that he has stolen from the guests. He then aggressively tells the guests to get out and never come back, as he doesn't want to kill us because he believes humans make for weak avatars. Now, that's just cold. The last thing I need to talk about in regards to this land is the fact that, unlike every other land in the park, there will be no store that will sell Orange Lantern or Larfleeze merchandise. The reason for this is because I simply refuse to believe that Larfleeze would be willing to sell or would allow the sale of anything related to the Orange Lantern Corps due to his immense greed. However, the Orange Lantern and Larfleeze merchandise could still be purchased at the giant store at the entrance of the park, which is strategically positioned right next to Okara, so guests won't have to travel far to obtain this merchandise. Alright guys, so that's it for the Lantern Corps theme park. Psych! We got one more ride to talk about. So, there's one crucial detail I left out of the Indigo Tribe's land knock, and that was that there's actually a path going out of the jungle towards the collision point of the planets. As it turns out, someone tunneled their way into the collision point and set up shop. There's a banner above the tunnel saying that guests can meet their favorite superheroes here. This, accompanied with the slightly off statues of Superman and Batman outside the tunnel, makes the guests a bit skeptical, but also very excited to get to meet DC superheroes that aren't lanterns. At some point in the queue, guests would pick up goggles that we are told are meant to protect against the extremely bright light of Superman's laser vision, which he likes to do for guests as a party trick. Guests would continue to travel through the tunnel until reaching a vehicle similar to that of Spider-Man and Transformers, aka a 3D simulator dark ride, with a sign above it saying that these are the monorails to the superheroes. The vehicle takes us outside, quote-unquote, the tunnels and back to Earth. We then travel outside the park, through the parking lot, and over to a graveyard near the park. At this point, the guests are justifiably confused, as Superman and Batman wouldn't have a meet and greet in a graveyard. But then from one of the tombstones comes Blackhand, the only permanent Black Lantern. You see, the Black Lantern is the embodiment of death, so every member of the Black Lantern Corps is a reanimated corpse brought back to life by Blackhand. But Blackhand is only able to obtain the full powers of the Black Lantern power ring when he himself is also dead. So in order to unleash his power, he went back to his family's house, killed his two brothers and his parents before committing suicide to obtain his power. It's really cool of you, man. It's really cool. Blackhand then greets the guests and explains how they were foolish to fall into his trap, as he says that Batman and Superman are dead. He even points out their tombstones in the graveyard. Now, in case you haven't noticed, this is actually a little Easter egg to my Scarecrow ride, where I had the names of superheroes on the tombstones in that graveyard, so go check that out. Anyways, after continuing to monologue for a bit, Blackhand finally gets down to business and begins to bring back to life the dead superheroes in the graveyard. Zombified versions of our favorite superheroes, including but not limited to Superman, Batman, Wonder Woman, Aquaman, and the Flash, begin to attack our cart in different ways using their powers and abilities. Now, in the comics, Flash actually never becomes a Black Lantern, but for the purposes of this ride, we're going to have him be a Black Lantern just as another recognizable superhero who can be added to that undead superhero army. After being attacked several times and narrowly avoiding death, Blackhand tells the dead superheroes to stop and says that he's seen enough, as he is clearly frustrated that the dead superheroes clearly aren't as competent as their former living counterparts. Blackhand approaches our cart and places his hand onto our cart, shaking it profusely as he laughs maniacally. But as he does this, he gets smacked by a giant blue hammer. It's Saint Walker, Hal Jordan, Indigo One, and Carol Ferris who have arrived to take down Blackhand and the dead superheroes. Notably missing are the other remaining Lantern leaders, including Larfleeze, Sinestro, and Atrocitus, who clearly do not care about the lives of the humans. An epic battle ensues, with the guests being involved at many points as either a distraction, something that gets in the way of the fight, or as a straight-up weapon used to help beat the enemies. At the end of the battle, the dead superheroes are sent back to their graves, and Blackhand is apprehended by the Lanterns. Indigo One then proceeds to instill the power of compassion into Blackhand, giving him excruciating pain. The other Lanterns then tell you to be more careful, but reassure the guests that they will continue to protect the humans so long as they are on Earth. This is not the actual canon ending to this storyline in the comics, as Black Can is actually defeated by the White Life entity and the newly formed White Lanterns, who use their power to revive Black Can, thus making him lose his power and subsequently reviving the previously dead superheroes. However, I thought this would be too hard to explain in the context of the ride, so I went with a way simpler tale of the tape. The ride would exit into a gift shop that would sell the merchandise of the DC superheroes that aren't the Lanterns. It would be constructed in a crude way, similar to how the banner and statues in front of the ride are, as to indicate this gift shop was also set up by Black Hand to further convince guests of the legitimacy of this attraction, while also making a bit of that sweet, sweet merch money on the side. So that is it for the Lantern Corps theme park, for real this time. That's all I got. I hope you enjoyed it. I really look forward to doing more full theme parks like this in the future sometime. I may even do a follow-up video to this if you guys really care enough about this. Just, kind of comparing my idea for the park to other parks that actually exist in real life. Let me know if you'd be interested in that. And that's going to be it for now. I will see you in the next one. Peace.